In yesterday's episode, we talked about how important customer service is in marketing. And I want to build on that topic by asking a question. How much are you willing to spend to keep a customer? I'm sorry to say that all too often that price is actually pretty low. And for me, one time, I was actually willing to lose a customer over 10 cents. So here's my story. When I was a McDonald's manager back in my 20s, one of the things I hated was our coffee. Not the coffee itself, though it wasn't really anything I wanted to drink, but the sizes that we had for it. There were three: small, medium, and large, or 12 ounce, 16 ounce, and 20 ounce, respectively. That sounds straightforward, but when someone ordered a regular sized coffee, we had no idea which one to ring up. Here was the problem. There was no regular option on the menu. And if you stopped to ask a customer which size they actually wanted, they'd often have to think about it. And they might even ask you to explain the sizes in detail. Other people would actually just get mad at you if you asked them, would just start shouting, "Regular, regular," at you. It wasted a lot of time. And if there's one thing we didn't want to do at McDonald's, it was waste time, because in our front lobby and our drive-thru, every second counted once we started taking an order. During breakfast time, we had a convention at our store that if someone said a regular coffee, that meant a medium-sized one, because that was what came with most of the extra value meals. And that seemed to work most of the time. So I was working one night and we got slammed busy due to an event going on nearby, and this guy pulled in and ordered a regular coffee in our drive-thru. Now, we only had 3 staff working, and I needed them to focus on keeping the food and drinks flowing, so I was in the back window taking the orders and the money. I went ahead and rung in a medium coffee, rushed to grab it myself, and had it waiting for the guy when he pulled up to pay, along with a courtesy bag of cream and sugar and stirrers. I told him the price, and he handed me some exact money in cash, but then he sighed in annoyance as he realized the price wasn't what he expected, and he started rooting around for another quarter. I had his change ready for him before he even handed me the rest of his cash. Things couldn't have been smoother. I wonder if he thought he was ordering a small coffee, I thought, but I shrugged. It wasn't a big deal. He got his coffee quickly, I kept the drive-thru moving, and all was well. And besides, he got some great service from me, didn't he? Well, the next night, just before we were getting ready to turn off the lights and leave after closing up, I got a phone call from an irate man who started telling me about the awful experience he'd had the night before. "I'm really sorry," I said. "I was the manager last night. What can we do?" And then he launched into this tirade about how this idiot in the back window overcharged him for coffee. He was extremely rude. And rather than pretend it was someone else, I let him know almost immediately that he dealt with me personally, and I remembered the situation. "I'm sorry for the error, and we're happy to give you a free copy next time you're in," I said. "We have a book, and I can write your name down. Just tell them you spoke to Sean, and they'll get it for you." "I don't want another coffee. I want my goddamn 10 cents, the guy yelled so loudly, one of my coworkers nearby actually jumped a little bit. I calmly explained to the gentleman that we're closed and I can leave 10 cents for him to come get tomorrow morning. He continued hurling abuse on me, telling me that he was a stockholder in McDonald's and he was going to get me fired. I'd had enough by this point. The rest of the staff were standing outside my office area now, and they were waiting on me so we could all go home. "Sir, people drop coins outside our drive-thru all the time," I said. "If you can't wait until tomorrow, you feel free to come out and you can have whatever you find on the ground. Have a good night." I hung up, satisfied with my answer and relieved to be free of his abuse. My coworkers thought it was really funny and loved how I ended things. "Let's go," I said, and we headed out. But on my drive home, all I could think about was a nagging question that haunts me even to this day. Wasn't there a better way to deal with that? Well, I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this is the Marketing Gateway. In the field of services marketing, there's a number called the CAC, or Customer Acquisition Cost. Basically, it's the average cost of sales and marketing activities required to get one new customer to make a purchase. This number can get very complicated very quickly when you begin to factor in all the costs that go into running a business, but suffice it to say that unless you're running a roadside produce stand or something along those lines, your CAC is usually a pretty serious investment. Beyond that is something called a CRC, or Customer Retention Cost, which is actually very difficult to calculate accurately. What research tends to find, however, is that it is far lower than the CAC, so much so that you'll often hear conventional wisdom statements like, It costs 10 times more to acquire a new customer than to serve an existing one. What the actual multiplier is varies by industry and complexity of the relationship. It might be 5 times or 6 times or 7 times. And it could also be 25 times, depending on how you look at things. But the actual research literature is very clear on one thing. It is far easier, cheaper, and more lucrative to serve someone who's already in a customer mindset than someone who's still trying to decide if they want to make that first purchase. Current customers can be very lucrative. In fact, there was a study done by Fred Reichheld about 25 years ago, which found that a 5% added investment in customer retention can boost profits by at least 25%. This line of thinking has led to a third statistic that's commonly used in measuring customer relationships, which is called the Customer Lifetime Value, or CLV. Smart businesses want to maximize this number as much as possible because it indicates that they're able to move beyond occasional transactional encounters with individual customers and instead reach that level where those customers are reliable regulars. So now that we have these nice quantitative numbers through which we can understand our customers, it's easy to bring them in the fold and keep them, right? We figure out how many customers we want, we spend enough according to our CAC to get them, then figure out our total CRC, bump up our spending on it by about 5%, and maximize our CLV. So how about customer profitability if only it were that easy? The logical flaw in this sort of thinking is that customers can be distilled down into numbers when the reality is their actual relationship is something that ought to be expressed qualitatively, not quantitatively. In other words, how they're feeling is a lot more important than what they're buying. Let me see if I can offer an example. My wife and I have been married for over 20 years. We're the sort of couple who shares everything as equal partners. We've shared good times, we've shared tough times, but we've stuck by each other through it all. During our early years of marriage, we had to learn how to grow together. And in our more recent years, we're finding that it's important we stay focused on not growing apart. Our love for each other hasn't changed, but it's deepened due to all our experiences together. Do we always see eye to eye? Definitely not. But we trust each other, and we are equally committed to following through on that vow we made 2 decades ago, till death do us part. Now, let me ask, what's the most important part of that story? If you thought it was the number of years we've been married, you have such a quantitative mindset that I'm honestly a little bit worried about you. I would also argue that this story wouldn't have been that different if we'd been married for only 10 years, and it'd probably sound very similar if we'd been married for 30 or 40. What's more, in the event that one of us passes away, the number of years we were married isn't going to be the part that matters to the survivor. It's going to be the loss of that close-knit relationship that we had. No, the important part of the story is why we've stayed together. And it's because we've committed ourselves to making this relationship the center of our shared life together. That's the qualitative story of our relationship, and it's what enables that number to go up. And love and marriage is a great example of what a real relationship looks like because it's often based on such positive intentions and includes such an intense and intimate start that it has many similarities to what it's like to find a retailer you particularly enjoy or a brand that you absolutely love. Most of us don't have very strong opinions about things that don't matter to us, but when we find something we truly love, we want to stay loyal to it and we want it to stay loyal to us. Lest you think I'm exaggerating, the internet is full of sad breakup stories with brands and products and retailers and influencers that customers felt once reflected their values and interests, but ultimately left them behind. Sadly, this is the part a lot of companies really don't get. That time and energy they spent acquiring a customer and getting them to want to come back, it's not going to result in a marriage right away, but it is definitely like a first date. Sometimes it's like a blind date that has the potential to massively surprise someone, and sometimes it's a matter of convenience due to limited options. And sometimes it's a situation where the customer has been waiting all their life for this particular experience, and it feels like it was created just for them. And it's so special they'll remember it forever and spend the rest of their lives hoping for another moment just like it. And again, lest you think I'm just talking about retail, this can truly be about anything. A service encounter, a branded product, a vacation hotel, a meal at a restaurant, a really important delivery, an amazing feat of customer service that goes above and beyond. People are waiting for these moments where they can let their guard down for a moment and fall in love with something that's really, truly meaningful to them. Impressing them really doesn't require a top-shelf experience either. just going a little above and beyond and showing some care and compassion is often a lot more meaningful than trying to pretend something's choice or premium when it's really just overpriced. But the flip side of love is a broken heart. And it's so easy to put a customer relationship on rocky footing by failing to listen or regard the customer's feelings. This is another area a lot of companies just don't get, despite all the internal evidence they have to show that when they do pay attention to their customers, good things tend to happen. As the old saying that's often attributed to Maya Angelou goes, people don't remember what you say or do, they remember how you make them feel. If they walk away from a service encounter feeling good, they'll often forget what they were so upset about in the first place and tell tales to others of how well they were treated. But when they walk away feeling unheard or unfulfilled, they don't just spread the bad vibes around, they can get downright petty. About 25 years ago, there was a famous picture of a Las Vegas couple who were getting divorced and trying to split up their shared assets. And what made the picture so memorable is that they were dividing up a huge pile of Beanie Babies. Yeah, Beanie Babies, those little stuffed toys that people across America went nuts for in the late 1990s because they thought they were going to be able to buy them up, resell them, and then retire off the profits. And this photo was particularly famous because it appeared to show the absolutely speculative insanity behind that sort of thinking. But because the photo was the butt of so many jokes, a lot of people misunderstood what was really happening. The couple, Francis and Harold Mountain, were having an ugly divorce, and Harold wanted to get back at his ex-wife for winning primary physical custody of their children, and so he demanded that he get half of the Beanie Babies out of spite. As it turned out, he only took a few, but the picture spoke volumes about just how petty people can be when they're splitting up. And that brings me back to the angry man at the drive-thru at McDonald's, because I really, truly believe that his problem had nothing to do with the price of the coffee and everything to do with the fact that I made him pay 10 cents more for it than he expected to. And even though I was trying to go above and beyond for him that night by providing what I felt was exemplary service, he was so upset over feeling that I'd conned him into spending an extra dime that it stuck with him and burned him up inside. When he tried to express his outrage to me, I didn't acknowledge the concern he was actually expressing. What I did instead was respond to the number. Was it worth it to enrage a customer over 10 cents? Truthfully, I never saw him again, so I guess I'll never know for sure. But let me tell you another story, one my wife mentioned to me as I showed her my script for this episode. Like I said, we have that kind of relationship. So many years ago, she was staying in a Hampton Inn while she was attending a friend's wedding. The Hampton Inn, if you didn't know, is part of the Hilton chain of hotels, and it's a reasonably nice, low-frills hotel, mainly positioned for one-night stays and business travelers. It was a late night at the wedding, and so she was surprised when around 7:30 a.m., she had someone from housekeeping knocking on her door to see if she'd already left. The disturbance woke her up, and while she didn't complain about it, it bothered her because she couldn't get back to sleep and had a long day of driving ahead. It just so happened that she left something at the hotel, and when she got home later that day, she wound up having to call them and ask them if they found it and could ship it back to her. The manager was happy to do so for the cost of shipping, which she gladly paid. "Otherwise, how was your stay with us?" asked the manager. "Well, it was fine, but just to let you know," my wife said, "I had someone from housekeeping knocking on my door at around 7:30 a.m. and it woke me up. I'm not upset, but I used to work in a hotel and I know that's not normal. So since you asked, I just thought I'd tell you so it doesn't happen to anyone else again." The manager began apologizing immediately and without her even asking, issued an immediate credit to her for the cost of the room, explaining that she was a Hilton Honors member and Hilton Service Guarantee meant she needed to be 100% satisfied. My wife didn't know what to say beyond a thank you. She was honestly stunned. She hadn't asked for anything and didn't expect anything. She just wanted to share that information in hopes of making the experience better for the next guest. The cost of that room was around $100, 1,000 times the amount I'd been willing to lose a customer over at McDonald's. But it was a solid investment in our customer relationship because Hilton is now one of our most preferred family of hotels. What's more, my wife's told that story to plenty of people, and I'm even telling it to you now for no reason other than the fact that it really, truly impressed me. So, was it worth it to save a customer relationship for $100? That's one thing we can definitely be certain about. I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this has been the Marketing Gateway. See you next time. Today's plug is for roundups at the register, or dumping your change into a charity bucket, or anything else that allows you to make a small but meaningful contribution at the point of sale in a retail store. I know these things can be annoying at times, and I know sometimes they feel like a big imposition. I haven't always rounded up myself, in fact, but recently I came across an article talking about the impact of these campaigns. According to a group called Engage for Good in a 2023 report, over 10 years from 2012 to 2022, Roundup for Charity requests went from raising $389 million to $749 million a year. And actually, it was more than that because that report only contains data from organizations that raised $1 million or more. I know these campaigns are obnoxious and ever-present. You don't have to donate to them if you don't want to, but let me tell you a few things that might change your mind about them. First of all, the average donation is just 44 cents. It's not a lot. Even if you did one every day for a month, you'd only be out about $13. And over the course of a year, doing it every day, you'd spend just over $160. The second is that it allows charitable organizations to make money far more easily while also spending less on fundraising, so they can instead put that money into their charitable cause. And in fact, organizations receiving those funds often sign agreements to ensure they spend no more than a quarter of these donations on administrative costs. The third is that your giving helps that charitable organization get the money it needs now, not at the end of the fiscal year when fundraising goals have to be met. Having done a lot of fundraising myself, I'll say that these goals are often hanging over everyone's heads, and they take away a lot of the attention from activities of the charitable group. Not having to worry as much about fundraising is a huge benefit to everyone involved. By the way, I mentioned McDonald's in this episode, and they've been using spare change donation boxes for decades to help fund their Ronald McDonald House charities, which help families in need have a place to stay when they're receiving medical care. And they also bring medical services into underprivileged communities. That's worth a few coins that you'd just lose anyway. So don't detest those roundups. Get excited about them because they're a chance to help make the world a little bit better for just a little bit of change.